Okay. I guess I've been running my mouth the whole time with no sound, so that should be much better for you guys. So I get to kind of start over. And so, welcome everybody. Some technical difficulties there. So today I want to connect into America's solar return. So happy birthday, America. This year, America turns 247 years old. And I kind of want to start today's discussion with Pluto and the Pluto cycle that makes America's 247th year quite interesting, because the full cycle of Pluto, it takes 248 years for it to return. That means go 360 degrees in the heavens and return to its beginning. And every country that goes through this type of experience goes through a death and rebirth process. And this process is usually described as a period of corruption that's followed by a renaissance. And if we look back at like Britain's history, we'll see this portrayed in the movie Mary, Queen of Scots is a big one for this one. And also Rome fell on its third one of these, and our predicament and Rome's predicament are quite interesting. There are some similarities. I probably won't go into that today. But I want to look at America's year and its solar return. And let me describe what that means for everybody that's never had a solar return reading. In the solar return, we look at the inner planets and where they're showing up in your chart to really give us a theme of what's going down this year. And so we're going to look at America's chart in this way, and we're going to take a closer look into what's really been unfolding, and over the last quite a few years in America's history. But we'll see how far we're going to really go back, because there are multiple cycles that complete within this 248-year cycle. So the end of America is near. Okay, the end of America in the way that it has been is getting much closer. And America is one America, and America to the world is another America. And then there's, of course, the secret America and the things that America has done kind of behind the scenes. And all of those things are quite interesting. And I want to say that I'm not here to do this and be political in any way. I just kind of want to give you guys the facts of what it's looking like. And to do that, I kind of want to read America's energy anyway, because as a people, America's chart kind of reveals how we're susceptible to certain things. And if you have questions as I go along, please put them in the comments. And I probably lost some people because I didn't have the volume on earlier. Always technical stuff, right? So let's get into it. Let's pull up America's chart and let's take a look at America. Okay, and so let me get America on here. There we go. All righty. So let's fix America here. Here we go. So America's astrology chart is quite interesting. And of course, born on the 4th of July. We have a sun in Cancer, which means security is a big part of America, and also that America is very susceptible to fear. And I think we can all agree that our history has shown that in quite a few different ways. So America also's destiny is to be transformative and relate and create diplomacy, because all of this energy in the 7th house here, in the relationship house, to expand through the value of security, to create proper relationships that are based on security, and to be multifaceted in its approach to things, definitely comes through this chart. That America comes through to create a revolution in a way of how it relates, and even a spiritual revolution that comes through the mind, and the revolution internally, and ingenuity, and all of those things with Uranus in Gemini here near the relationship house and the health house and the house of service of America bring some very interesting things. That America is here to lead the way in spiritual development for the future in a way, but we also have to become extremely great diplomatic people. And so communication and erraticness around communication and rage shows up in America's chart also. And the moon shows up in that America hates to be bored. Okay, so this may be why our attention span isn't the greatest. Okay, and in Pluto's energy in America's chart says that America has to go through a death and rebirth of value over and over again. And, America was founded with a big brother kind of energy on top of it. And, maybe America has kind of turned into that big brother energy on top of it. And this is indicative of Pluto's energy. And, America's karma in this chart is the erraticness of value that leads to the loss of value. So when people are excluded and using value issues and discrimination against people are also interested in America's development and self-development in the chart. So also I'd say America wants to get down to the bottom of everything and figure out things. And career and leadership and all of that does show up in America's chart. And also healing of the soul and healing of the integrity of the soul also shows up in America's chart. So this is America's chart. Its rising sign is Sagittarius. So to seek truth, to expand, and the exaltation of Jupiter in Cancer here brings the energy of nurturing that America, kind of comes forward in that nurturing sometimes, but maybe behind the scenes it may not be so nurturing. Who knows anything anymore? But we're going to really find out all of that. And at the end of the cycle, all of these things are being worked out so that we can move forward in this new place, in this rebirth and renaissance. So I am interested of where the renaissance is going to show up. And, on a personal note for everybody, in the retrogrades that we've been going through over the last 3 years, and I kind of want to bring you all back to 2020, and I'm going to say that anything that was out of the alignment of your integrity in 2020 came up. And any way you felt used and stuck also came up. Now for America, that came up in the soul of America. And in 2020, it could have brought a lot of drama in America's energy. And Venus being retrograde in Capricorn that year brought a lot of restriction. And we saw a lot of restrictive stuff show up in America at that time. And that tension during the Mars and Venus retrograde of 2020 really created a lot of interpersonal change for everybody, okay? And it was at a 90-degree angle, so all of our interpersonal relationships have been going through this interesting transition. And if we look back and think about what was going on in 2020, it's not a really far thing for us to connect how that was showing up for America. And in the financial house, it's showing up when, of course, they, printed, I think, a good $9 trillion they threw at the economy. What happens when you print a lot of money to our value of our money? You can answer that question yourself, you guys. So this issue with our finances and an issue with the soul of America and the direction of America, okay, shows up in 2020 just like it showed up in your lives. And this year, 2023, is the year where all of that energy gets rectified. And the Mars retrograde this year showed up in the sign of Gemini, which is where the Mars of America is. And America has to go through a restructuring of how it relates. And it went through this period, Halloween of last year till about March 15th of this year. And so we're halfway through this restructuring, and the final part starts this month around the 22nd of July till September, October of the Venus retrograde. And I'm about to show you where that shows up in the chart, because on the birthday chart, we're going to see something quite interesting. So far, we're looking at just the chart of America, but I'm going to go ahead and bring the other chart. And for the sticklers out there, it says July 5th, which is actually America's birthday, is tomorrow. It doesn't always fall on the same date before, date after, but it has to connect to the same degree. So if you notice, the sun is 13 degrees here and 13 degrees. So what we have in front of us is a solar return chart. So let's take a look at America's birthday. And so first of all, there's a couple major themes I want to talk about that America's going through. And I kind of have to give us some backstory of all of that. And, first let's go back to 2022 a little bit. And Saturn, the great tester in the astrology wheel here, is sitting on the house of communication for America. And I think 2022 was a big year where censorship, fake news or a fact checking, right, is this very interesting thing, and communication, restricting communication. And we're seeing a lot of that really rev up in 2022. Now, before that, in 2019 and 2020, there was a collapse of the whole financial reality of America's chart, which kind of began to head us this interesting direction. And if we look back to 2008, when we had the big recession and the housing bubble, we see that showing up again in 2020. But one thing that happened that was quite interesting is that, trillions, about $9 trillion was thrown at the economy at that time. So it's a very interesting play here by America and the central banking whole reality in the fiat currency, and this power struggle that's happening that has been really activated in America's chart since 2020. Now this year, those things get rectified in some way. And you may ask me, well, how does that happen? And I don't really know how it happens, you guys. But what I do know is that America's Pluto return and this 48-year cycle has everything to do with our financial reality and also how we begin to share value. And since 2008, Pluto went into the sign of Capricorn, and everything became extremely capitalistic, corporatized on every level. And those things have been pushed in a really, really big way. And as we move into Aquarius here, there is much more of a functionality of us having creative communities, like the native people prophesized that would happen. And as we move forward, the ability to embody things really stands out a lot more. But America is going through an expansion of the soul this year. And there's been a revolution in the soul of America over the last 5 or 6 years. And that's where the Uranus going through the house of creativity and, expansion for children, expansion for creativity, expansion on the soul level. It's time for America to kind of grow up. We don't live in the same world that we used to when America had most of the money. Okay? So America also is going through another consciousness crisis and the return of Chiron in the chart, which is a spiritual kind of development thing. And as I studied America's chart, I went back into the 80s and into what a lot of us in the community call the harmonic convergence and the spiritualization of America, yoga coming to America, and all of that is when Pluto was in the house of spirituality for America, and it stayed there till almost 1990, late 90s basically. And then Pluto arrived in the first house of America, and this energy brought more war. It brought all kinds of interesting things, and it brought this restlessness in America's energy. And, it's been quite physical and kinesthetic in this process of death and rebirth on a physical level, that if we go back into the 80s and late 90s, there was some spiritual development, and we are seeing that expand also as we move forward. And I'm bringing this up because Neptune here is transiting the home environment of America. And so this is how America feels inwardly about itself, okay? And there's a shit ton of deception here, inner deception, and what am I supposed to believe? What's supposed to be real? What's not real? And, this is a very interesting thing that started 7 years ago. And 7 years ago, Saturn was in the sign of Sagittarius, and that's when fake news began to come up. And this is why nobody knows what the news is. Who knows what's real, okay? How many conspiracy theories have become facts, okay? And the ridiculousness of the control of the media and also the expression of the people. And so we see this big T-square coming under now in this testing that is this censorship going to stand the test of time. And I don't think any of you like being censored. And they did it kind of like we're doing this for your own good. And I don't know if that's a very functional path for anything, okay? Because you obviously can't think for yourself, so we must censor what you think is real and what's not real and all of that. And, how the politics and the censorship got together is a quite interesting thing. But anyway, make your own decisions in that reality, right? So I also want to show you that on this birthday chart, we have Mars and Venus sandwiching the house of courts. And in America's chart, the Supreme Court is what we're talking about here. And so during this Venus retrograde this month until the end of the summer, heading into next year, there should be a lot of things that are coming through the court system. And there's going to be some things from the past come back to bite people in that whole reality. Okay? And, the astrology says the internalization of integration, this house rules, judges, court systems, and all of that. And so right now, any conflicts that are showing up in the court on America's birthday is the same arena where Venus is going to go retrograde and bring the past up. Okay? So it's not really over. None of it's over until it's over. And this is the final year of the Pluto return. So expect big things. And I know people get on all the time and saying it's going to happen tomorrow, the next day, and all of that other ridiculousness, which is driving us crazy too, isn't it? But there are some things really moving forward here, and I hope those things become more public. But of course, the divide between us in so many ways, instead of seeing how we connect, is kind of America's cross to bear. And in this chart, feeling restricted emotionally and the rage of having to be right or wrong has been really revealed as a big problem for America. Okay? Because if we have to be right or wrong, we become real manipulatable. Okay? And we can pit ourselves against other people. And the divide and conquer business is easy to do. Okay? And it's real obvious, isn't it? So something that I found in America's progressions, which move very slowly, you guys. They move very slowly. The sun moves 1 degree per year. But since America's 247 years old, there was some interesting things here. And when I took you back to 7 years in fake news, when all this came out, America was going through the last quarter of its sun and moon cycle. So America is coming into its dark moon phase this year and next year. And in 2025, it has a new beginning and a new foundation that comes forward. So at the moment, America and the dollar and the fiat currency, of course, are all tied together. And, what are we going to do about it? Okay? What's going to happen? Okay? Minimalizing on every level for Americans is happening. But it's not just happening in America. It's happening around the world. And France, of course, is very connected to us in our endeavors for freedom and have been, including the time of the Revolutionary War. So France is going through some similar things and some similar kind of revelations here. And the fact that they are cutting all their media off right now and controlling what we see. How do we come together without seeing what's happening in the world? Okay? I don't really know. But there is restriction and restructuring through the media. And we have to kind of decide if we're going to let the victim story or the entitlement or fascist story is going to run everything, where now people make decisions for us instead of us having an actual democracy. So it's quite interesting to seeing how America's falling. And also what's quite interesting is that in America's career house and how America comes off to the world, Mars is retrograde in its progress chart. That means that things are seemingly going backwards, and in that chart they stay backwards till about 2080 something. Okay, so America's progression in the world has kind of hit this plateau, and the war machine has pushed it as far as it can. And I think us understanding that, war is profitable, and figuring out how to solve the problems of the world together without war. I don't know. Can we do it? And, the Aquarian energy is calling us forward to create these types of communities. So, structure and revolution is at tension in this chart this year. And it shows that America must restructure how it communicates and relates itself. And its health, America's health, is erratic this year. And there could be sudden changes around the value of things. And you see this number 21 and 22 right here on the health house here. And Uranus is very, very close. Now, in 2024, we have this huge expansion of individual and individual value, but it comes in the face of fractional banking that doesn't create a lot of value for us. Okay, so everything is transforming and getting much simpler, and banking, I hope, of course, is one of those things. But having a value and a value in our currency is quite interesting. And I'm not sure that we can continue in the fiat reality, because obviously throwing money at the problem doesn't fix it. It creates more inflation. But anyway, these are all things we're having to watch the news and figure out. So arguments, past dramatic things coming to the surface, court rulings, okay, also showing up this summer, very, very indicated. And of course, the restriction in communication obviously is continuing, and it will continue as it goes forward a bit, as we figure out if we can restructure and express ourselves and create communities where the information is clear and we can make our own decisions. I kind of wish there were reporters like the ones back in the day that actually reported the news, but I think we've come to question everything. And that's part of the last 7 years that we're coming under test. And, I often think, why wasn't there fake news 7 years ago? And I'm harping on this because in the chart, it's really showing that the whole expression of ourselves and the expression of America in this chart has to be restructured for America to survive and to expand. So, going global is a beautiful thing, but if we do it at the sacrifice of our own people, it's a fascinating reality that we live in, isn't it? So there is expansion of the soul of America, okay? And America's done great things in the world, and it's also done really terrible things in the world, and I think that's something that we don't have to debate over, that it's real. And we got to learn from our mistakes. And I do see in this chart on the birthday that in the South Node here, loss of hopes, dreams, and aspirations through power struggles, loss of social endeavors, and loss of social endeavors that brought power struggles and meant to divide, not connect us. So, growing up in this country and living in the integration of the schools, and most of our generations really show up and connect and see each other as humans. But I think there is a large movement to go back to a place where we don't see each other in that way. And our parents had segregation and all of those things. And I don't want to bring it back, because I would rather see everybody as the human being that they are. And I think that's where we're all headed in the Aquarian energy. So let's don't fall for the rage, but let's do get upset if we need to really be clear that our rights are important. And, are we being supported as a country? People are always like, stand up for things, but how do we actually do that? And I think that the spiritual movement in America is a really big thing, and that gets perverted too, of course, doesn't it? So becoming responsible and growing up, I think, is a thing that America could definitely do. So this chart shows that this year there will be arguments. There also will be truth. There also will be expansion, and the courts will have to deal with it. And that's why we have these checks and balances as a country. And hopefully they would work right. But I think we've been seeing that we're questioning if those things, and questioning everything at the end of this cycle is really big. Okay, so if you don't have questions, I would be really surprised. Okay, and I think some people are holding their breath and hoping it's going to be okay. And, I don't really know if it's going to be okay. But I do know that America is going to go through a change. And the restructuring of America happens in 25, 26. And that's the Saturn opposition of America that's coming here. But this Pluto cycle has everything to do with our finances, our value, our property, how we deal with that, and how we deal with value in the world. And our spirituality is connected to that because of the sign of Scorpio and the rulership of Pluto here. And I think that's why I brought up the 80s and the harmonic convergence and all the things that really began to open up America's awareness. So foreign relations and conflict over foreign relations is also indicated with the court things. So, I think us figuring out what's truthful and functional for us and making proper functional decisions that help America move forward in this collapse of the way that things have been. And that's definitely what it is, you guys. It is a collapse of the way things have been, and hopefully we will get the chance to make it a lot better. Because I don't think any of us think that the system is not broken, So yeah, we can say that all day long, but how does it portray? How does it work out? We're going to find out. So this was America's birthday reading, and America, we're going to do this again. Okay, we're going to take some more looks at this. Yeah. So thanks for joining me. Thanks for kicking it here. I hope you got something out of it. And yeah, if there's any questions, you want to put them on the chat here. I'll definitely entertain those for a moment. If not, then I'm going to continue my 4th of July and wish everybody a happy 4th of July. And also maybe we can remember the values that America was set in. And those things that have got moved away and pushed away, and restructuring how we use the law, and how we communicate with each other. I think somebody was telling me recently is that, people used to do things together and help each other out, like our parents, if they had to do things, Any astrology thoughts about RFK Jr.? I haven't seen his chart, okay? So I can't really say to that. And I did not look at any politician's chart. I did look at Russia's chart, which Russia turned 30 from its new beginning here in the last couple years, which I thought was interesting. And Russia is stabilizing. And I saw a really cool interview that translated Putin, and he was talking about the Bolsheviks and what happened to Russia in the early part of the century, as in reference to what's seemingly happening to America. I thought that was quite interesting. China's chart was quite interesting also. It was a little scarier, actually, and a little more subtle. And I think, China is very subtle about some things. So, all the tensions that we're having diplomatically in the world definitely is showing up in this chart. But Susan there, if you want me to, sometimes we'll pull off RFK Jr.'s chart and see what's up. And it's fascinating. He's standing up for people's basic rights to kind of choose, and inform themselves and not just have one-sided information. So I do appreciate what he does bring to it. But I haven't looked at the whole presidential thing or any of that craziness. This is more about Pluto's cycle. If you guys got any more questions, but that was a great one, of course. Absolutely. All right. Well, it was such a pleasure, and I hope this was at least entertaining, because I was just running my mouth the whole time. And I do love to have the conversation. So if anybody ever wants to come on and get into some crazy stuff like that, we're always into that. So thanks for joining me. Kicking it on the 4th of July. We do have a YouTube, QRI 23 at QRI 23. Also, if you want to see when we post here. All right. Have a wonderful evening, everybody, and stay safe. And peace out, America.